Shelly Miscavige. She has not appeared in public since 2005.
Where's Shelly and what happened?
Where is Shelly?
We're looking at like 17 years of a person just missing.
Shelly Miscavige was given into the sole care of L. Ron Hubbard by her parents when she was 12.
This is where Shelly is believed to be being held captive.
Do you believe that Shelly Miscavige is a threat today?
Oh,
Absolutely.
she's seen it all. She's been by his side the whole time.
Welcome back to the channel. My name is Claire Headley. I'm your host for today, and this is the next episode of my series, Where is Shelly Miscavige? My guest for today is none other than Mr. Blown for Good, Marc Headley. Welcome back, honey.
Hey, guys.
So we did the first episode of Where is Shelly with you talking about your experiences with Shelly. And then we agreed that we would do a separate episode, not so much about Shelly, but more about Shelly's family, specifically her father, Barney Barnett, and her half-sister, Suzette, who was a good friend of ours for many years. And I felt this was important to cover, not so much digging into who is Shelly necessarily, but to help the viewers get a better understanding of Shelly's family, because in a later episode we'll be covering a lot of information that I've come across in regards to Shelly's experiences growing up in Scientology. So I think it's important to really dig deep and talk about Barney and Suzette and so forth to give that context.
Absolutely. Yeah, when we basically moved, when we left the Sea Org in 2005, in January 2005, and then we moved to Kansas City, and then after just a few months in Kansas City, I was lured back to Los Angeles for a job, a very high-paying job, and I'd only been out of the Sea Org a few months, and whereas I was used to making $46 a week, $46.28, I think it was, $46.28. Anyway, a 40 or so dollars a week. And then I went in, and so in a year we didn't get paid every week either. So in a year we might make $2,500. I was going to go back and do a job where I was making $2,500 a week. So it was really hard not to say yes to that. But when we did that, moved back to Los Angeles, after a little while, we had an apartment, and then we ended up renting a small house from somebody that we knew, a connection that we knew. And when we lived in that house, this is in, late 2005, early 2006 when we're living in this house. And we had a guest house as well. So it was a 2-bedroom house and then a guest house in the back. And another person that had also worked at the base in the Sea Organization, who had gotten kicked out, lived in the 2nd bedroom of the house. And in the back of that house lived a girl named Suzette. And Suzette was Shelly Miscavige's half-sister. They had the same father, but they had different mothers. Yeah. And she had also just been kicked out of the Sea Organization. So you had us, Claire and I, and then this other 2 people that had all used to be at the Ant Base a year before, were now out in the wild and working in Hollywood in the industry and doing stuff like that. And so Suzette was essentially one of our roommates, and she had little contact with Shelly, but she would tell us stories of what Shelly was like and how it was like, what were the benefits or what were the negatives about being her sister and this sort of thing. And tell us some Shelly stories here and there. And, excuse me. And then here's the crazy thing is that when Suzette, left the Sea Organization, she was a very highly skilled visual effects artist. So post-production, compositing, 2D effects, 3D effects, all, visual effects industry. Work that she could easily make anywhere from $50 to $200 an hour. That was the work she was doing when she was in Scientology. She was doing visual effects for their videos. Yeah. And so when she left the Sea Organization, the job that they arranged for her was cleaning up flooded houses down in Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, where she was making minimum wage, I think.
I don't even think she was making minimum wage. I'm thinking she was making like $50 a day or something like that. Just like a flat thing.
Working for a Scientologist.
That's
course.
right. And now this is a very common thing that happens within the Sea Organization and Scientologists. And when Sea Org members are either kicked out or they escape or they kind of get out, but they don't want to get declared a suppressive person, is that they will go to work for a Scientologist who also may be in a similar situation, like they're kind of in trouble, and in order to make it up, they're going to watch one of these ex-Sea Org members. And so she was working with some people in that kind of general vicinity category.
Right. And of course, the sad part being that when you're conditioned as a member of the Sea Organization for so many years, as you said, making 46 and change a week, $50 a day seems like you're a gazillionaire.
You just 7x'd your income right there. Instead of making $50 a week, you're going to make $350 a week.
Yeah.
Oh, because you're going to work 7 days if you can too.
Well, of course.
Because you're going to try to get as much money as possible.
A Sea Org member doesn't think not to work 7 days a week.
Anyway, so she essentially went down and was doing this work. She could have easily made as much as she would make in a week. She could easily make that in half a day of work doing visual effects artists. No question. So when we escaped and we found out that this is what was happening. And then she had moved from Louisiana, and then she was doing some other work that was also paying equally as low. And it was like, you should 100% be doing visual effects stuff. And so we helped her get a job. I specifically helped her get a job at a place where she could do that. Didn't you even
help her put her reel together and all of that?
I just remember we were trying to figure out whatever we could figure out. And then I was the head of a visual effects department. I was like not the head of it. I was like the coordinator, the guy who hires people. So I was like, I know where you can get a job because I need somebody that does what you do, and I will hire you to do that job. And I hired. To be honest, there was a lot of ex-Scientology and ex-Sea Org members doing that sort of work in Hollywood for a while because I was getting them jobs all over the place doing that. But regardless, I even flew a guy out to LA from England and got him a car and an apartment and hired him as a VFX artist, which as far as I know, he still does that to this day.
Yep.
Regardless, Suzette was living with us. She got to the point where she got this job. She was living with us. Now, here's the craziest thing. Her dad did not know that she was no longer in the Sea Org. He had been calling Golden Era Productions for a year, and they'd put him on hold and go look for her and then not find her and say, we couldn't find her, but, call back.
We'll take a message.
She wasn't in the Sea Org anymore. She was in Louisiana. Cleaning up flooded houses in the French Quarter, and Scientology are telling him we can't track her down.
Bald-faced lie.
Because if they tell him that she's not in the Sea Org, there's a very good chance that she's going to tell him all the craziness that was happening in the Sea Org, and he's Shelly Miscavige's father. That's not going to be a good look. Anyway, so when she moved in with us, she had just sort of reconnected with Barney within the last few months.
Yeah. And by the way, at this time that they would not let Barney speak to Suzette for a year, he was already battling cancer at that time.
Yeah. He was an older gentleman, Barney. Her father, Shelly Miscavige's father's name is Barney Barnett. He was... we're going to have to do a separate video of sort of the history. I think we might have to do that as a completely separate video because the stories that Barney had told, they're amazing. But either way, he was in Scientology, all of the children's lives. He had his 4 daughters, right?
Yep.
It's Camille, I think is the oldest one.
No,
Oh
Clarice
no,
is the
Clarice.
oldest.
Sorry, the girl that I worked with at Golden Era Productions, Clarice Barnett. Then there's Shelly Barnett. Then there's Camille Barnett, and then Suzette Barnett.
Yeah. And so Clarice, Shelly, and Camille were all daughters
Flo
of
Barnett.
Flo. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Suzette,
Has a separate
Barney
mother.
was her father, and a separate mother.
Yeah. Okay. So, so fast forward. It's 2006. Suzette's now out of the Sea Organization. Barney now knows that she's out of the Sea Organization, and he would come over to our house and hang out. Like maybe he would be there to meet up with Suzette, and it's 5:00, and hey, I'm supposed to meet Suzette. She hasn't gotten off work yet. We sit on the back porch, have a cigarette, and chat. And she might be stuck in traffic an hour, and he'll tell me an hour worth of the most amazing Shelly Miscavige stories you're ever going to hear anywhere. And then he'd also tell me stories about how, like, he was basically financially bankrupt. He had no money. He had credit card debt. He had no way to pay the bills. All he was doing was paying maybe small amount of payments towards cards so they wouldn't shut down, but minimum interest type situation. He had an ex-Sea Org member living with him with her son, who was on the spectrum, and he had issues, and so he had to deal with that. And then he lived in a small apartment or like kind of a rental or something in Glendale.
Yeah.
And he was doing roofing and just any odd job he could get his hands on. He was driving a Toyota Land Cruiser that was covered with tar and paint and wrecked and bumped and dented and crashed into and crashed onto and everything else. And he's showing up and we're chatting. The more I talk to the guy, the more I find out he's basically destitute and he'll do anything for some money. And I start thinking of things that I can do, like, hey, maybe I'll talk to the guy who owns his house. Maybe he wants to get the house painted. And I talk to the owner and he's like, absolutely, absolutely, have him do it. Yeah, get him to. I'll give him some money. And he was fixed the garage door, anything. He did a bunch of work for my company at my shop, and
I remember too, you would always triple the estimates he would give us.
Yeah.
Like he'd say, oh, $1,000. And we're like, to paint an entire house?
Yeah.
And like
You
every other
nuts.
quote was like 4,000. So you're like, just make it 3,500 and it will be the best quote. And sure enough, he got the job.
But and one of the things that I will never forget is he tells me this whole story. And he's telling me his whole thing. And every single time I'm sort of like, but Dave and Shelly are millionaires. Like they could give you $1 million. They could give you 100,000. They could at least get you a house, get you taken care of, like just your basic necessities, like buy you a house and give you like a $5,000 a month allowance. They could do that, and it wouldn't even be a speck of dust on their radar. They could do that. And he's just like, yeah, no. And I'm just like, but do they know? And he's like, they have to know. Like, they know. How could they not know? And I'm just like, I don't think they know, Barney. And if they do know, then maybe send them a thing like, hey, can you throw me a bone here? And
remember, he also commented all they ever would give him for Christmas or birthdays was the shrink wrapped L. Ron Hubbard lectures that he had not even opened.
It was heartbreaking because
it was.
What all the guy needs is a check.
Right.
He doesn't need any L. Ron Hubbard lectures on cassette. He needs $1,500, which is what they sell those things for. That's what he needs. Yeah. So that the fact that they were sending him to him, and then he felt so guilty because I'd be like, well, dude, those things, right? Like when they're new, when they give them to you, I mean, you could get, like 60 cents on the dollars for those in the Scientology market. And who's going to report you? You're Shelly Miscavige's dad.
Right.
You probably could have a whole racket going. And he's like, no, because then if they ask or, how'd you like the lecture? And then I'm like, who cares, dude? He literally he was probably sitting on $50,000 worth of L. Ron Hubbard lectures, like still in the shrink wrap.
Exactly. Still in the wrapper.
That's one thing he would always say whenever he would mention them. He would always say that. He would say, I've got this still in the shrink wrap. And it was such a weird thing. But that he had basically saying that he, not only did they give that to them, but that he hadn't even listened to them and he never planned to.
Right.
And that was the other thing, that he was very similar to my father in that my father wasn't in Scientology, but he knew that if you want to talk to your kids, then you can't be saying things, you can't be doing things that make Scientology look bad.
Yeah.
And he had been playing that game since the 1960s.
Yeah.
With Scientology.
Just playing along so that he could maintain a relationship with his daughters.
For 40 years, that guy knew, they have all my kids.
Oh, yeah.
If I don't play the game, I don't got my kids.
Yeah.
And you could tell that he was broken by that. And that it was almost like even the fact that Suzette, he was able to do stuff with Suzette, it was kind of, I think to him it was a big treat, because he never got to do that with any of those kids when they were that age.
No.
When they were younger, at least, because they were all in the Sea Organization. And I'm not sure what his what relationship was with Camille, because I think Camille is the only one who didn't kind of sort of go on to be a full-fledged Sea Org member and do all that stuff. She was involved with Scientology, but she wasn't working for him. She was just adjacent.
She didn't go to the ship with Hubbard, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that was the other crazy thing, is that there's, I mean, you think about this Shelly Miscavige story. You think it's crazy that she was working with L. Ron Hubbard when she was a teenager. She had a whole world of nonsense happen before that, between and invariably Scientology nonsense related. I mean, we'll have to go. We will have to do a whole video on it.
We will. It'll be a separate.
There were times where her life could have changed in many different directions at many different points, just based on nonsense until she was 14. I mean, it's wild. And the craziest thing about this Barney and Suzette situation was that Barney would come over, and he would actually, because he would come over to see Suzette, and then we'd just end up chatting. Or he'd come over for dinner or a party or whatever, and then he'd be there for hours and hours. I mean, I think they came over, like we had a barbecue or something one time, and we invited him and the son and it wasn't his wife. It was kind of weird. It was like he was helping her out, but maybe they were kind of.
Her name was Beth, right?
Yeah, Beth.
Yeah.
I don't remember, and it was, to me, I was just like, whatever, dude. I don't. Just come to the barbecue. I don't need to know I don't need to know what's going on here. Just we're here to have fun. But then he would be working, so he'd be painting the house, so he might be there all day, and I might be doing stuff from home, and then we just end up chatting. We know you get off. Hey, it's 3:30, dude. It's getting kind of hot. You want a drink? And then 8:00 at night, dude. It's 8:00, dude. I got to go to bed. You got to get home. We've been yapping for hours. And so it almost became a thing where, because I knew Clarice, his other daughter, so well, and because I had interaction with Shelly, and because obviously I knew Suzette, I could talk to him about all of his daughters besides the one that wasn't in the Sea Org at the Ant Base. And I had talked to him for years when I was in the Sea Org. And he would call for Clarice, who I worked with, and I'd be like, "Hey, Barney, what's up?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, they're looking for her. I'll just, I'll let you know when she gets here, but what's up, And then we would just chat. So it was really kind of crazy for me to then get to meet him in person, and then talk about what was going on when he had called, or, when they went to go get Clarice, where did they go? And I was like, dude, I have no idea. It's just like, she could have been in another building. She could have been upstairs, just like, I don't know. I just sat there and yapped with you.
Yeah.
But
did he ever talk about, they had a really nice family home in Dallas, Texas, when the three girls were very little. And Barney was a very successful businessman. And he had built the whole house and all this.
I think they lost that house or something. I think there was some kind of...
But I was just curious because you were mentioning the similarities with your dad, Barney. And from all the different people I've talked to, I got the very distinct impression that Barney was not on, like, he didn't want anything to do with moving to Los Angeles and getting all deep into Scientology, but his hand was somewhat forced because Flo was dead set on doing this and taking the girls with them. I was just curious if he ever talked about that part.
I don't think he really got into a lot of the details. I just know that there was some sort of, I want to say, and that's why I think we have to do another video, but I want to say that they were in the middle of trying to sell everything so that they could come to California, and somehow that got bungled and the whole thing kind of ended horribly. Like they basically just had to give everything away, and whatever he had built up for this whole time, his sort of was between giving it to Scientology and losing whatever else was there. It was sort of like, we're done, we're busted. And it was almost immediate. Like it was all a whirlwind of, we're going to do this and we're going to go here, and what are we doing with the kids, and we're going to leave the kids there, but then we'll go here and we'll get back. And then when they got back, the kids were gone. And it's just like, there's so much insanity. And whenever Barney would talk about anything like that, it would always just be like, like, what are you going to do? It was just like, I got nothing. And
yeah, he'd kind of resigned himself to just playing along to maintain some kind of relationship at that point.
And I think it got to a point where I was sort of asking him more things, like, Barney, like, I'm giving you, I got you this job and I got you that job. I was like, do you have anything else? He goes, I just don't. Mm-hmm. And so I basically was like, okay, well, I'm going to keep you busy as long as I can keep you busy. I will constantly give you work, and I'll figure out ways to keep. It was sort of weird to me, and Barney might have been one of the first people that we were sort of doing what we're doing now with the Aftermath Foundation. He might have been one of the first people that it was like, this guy needs he needs a champion. He needs somebody, an advocate. He needs somebody to look out for him, because no one's looking out for him.
Yeah.
And this is the father-in-law of David Miscavige and the father of Shelly Miscavige. And you're like, these guys could snap their fingers and this guy would be set. He could have a new house. He could be totally taken care of, and literally it would mean nothing to them. It would literally, it would almost be like, well, yeah, of course, that absolutely, that's a given. Know that they did that with Dave's mom.
Yeah,
and he used to talk mad trash about that woman on a full-time basis.
Yeah,
how she was this and she was this, and it was always like, oh my gosh, she's going to do this, and how that's going to look bad on him. Like whatever she would do would make him look bad. It wasn't ever like, oh, I can't believe, she's getting older and she's doing this. It's, and we got to figure that out. It's like, no, she's making me look bad by doing dumb old people stuff.
Right.
But I guarantee you she was set. I guarantee you that whatever needed to be taken care of was taken care of.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like, but why wouldn't they just do that for Shelly's dad? And then that's where you get to see, like, this is not, it's not like Dave and Shelly show. It's the Dave show, and Shelly just happens to be on the show.
Yeah. I remember Barney asking me, do you think Shelly's happy? And, at that point, I was just honest. I was like, I don't know how to answer that. It's, because, and again, I had not even really started talking out at that point or said anything. I was just still pretty clammed up and shut down. But, that's all he cared about was. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because we were both, I was already posting on the internet as Blown for Good. Claire didn't know that, by the way. I was just doing it like, hey, I can't sleep, let me just creating something out here, a story about the Scientology property.
I was somewhat suspicious, but I still laugh about like when we were in Kansas City and you were out there in the living room watching South Park episode about Scientology, and I was just like, I can't watch.
Yeah, and I literally, I looked at Claire and I was like, "Is this really?" And she's like, "Pretty much."
Yeah,
and I was just like, anyway. So, I was already knew. I was like, this Scientology stuff, this whole thing is a giant scam. And Barney knew that too. And the funny thing is that at some point, this went on for months where he was just doing stuff and hanging out and we were yapping. And at some point, either it was a private investigator. We think that private investigators were watching the house and they just saw the handyman and they just said, we're reporting there's a handyman. We think at some point, somebody...
we had busted somebody out from the headquarters.
Yes, that's exactly right.
So we knew we were expecting the private investigators, but we just didn't think quick enough on our toes to realize, oh shoot, we're going to be under a magnifying glass because we just busted someone out from the headquarters, which had never been done before to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And Barney, Shelly's father, is coming to our house. So I think he was there painting, and he said some random dude just came up and asked him. And he didn't even say anything to us at the time, right?
Yeah, he essentially, somebody from OSA, the Office of Special Affairs, Scientology spy wing, used to be called the Guardian's Office, perpetrated the largest infiltration of the United States government in its history. Office of Special Affairs had probably an Office of Special Affairs member, a Sea Org member watching the house.
Yeah.
And somebody who would know who the person is that we busted out and also would recognize this character called Barney, who just happened to be Shelly Miscavige's father. That person would maybe recognize one or both of those people. We think that they saw him show up and they were like, oh my goodness, the person that busted out didn't show up here, but there's somebody else who showed up here. And this report is going to be really hard to write.
Yeah.
And
no one wanted to, they were picking straws as to who was going to send that one up, right?
Yeah, that's not a good bomb to drop off at the old comm center there.
No.
Dropping that one in the in basket for David Miscavige. Your father-in-law is also hanging out over at that place.
Yeah, but my favorite part of this that you're about to get to is how we found out about this even happening.
Yeah. So Barney's painting the house or doing whatever, fixing the garage, or whatever project he's in the middle of. And he rolls up and he's like, hey, we got to talk. And I'm like, okay. He goes, hey, I had to go in session yesterday. I had to get a sec check down at the Scientology Center. And so we need to get our story straight. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you own a house and I'm painting a house. I don't know you. I'm doing work at the house. And I'm like, good thinking.
Yeah, we're like, absolutely. We have no idea who you are.
And then I was like, and I own a shop and you're going to be doing some work over at that shop. And he was like, yeah, no, we'll keep this thing going. I mean, he literally worked for me until the day he passed. He was working for me on Friday and he passed on the Saturday. I think he was they went to Vegas or something? They went to something. They went and did something. And I don't know if it was the travel or the heat or whatever. And he had cancer for years.
Yeah.
And not treated. Like he wouldn't do the radiation. He wouldn't do the chemo. And he was the breadwinner for the family. So he can't just go and lay in a hospital bed somewhere and get treatment. So he chose to be the breadwinner and till the day he died. And he could have got treatment. He could have got dealt. There's no scenario where that all couldn't have been provided for him without issue from these people.
He was being seen at the VA's hospital.
That's right. That's the only reason that he even knew that he had cancer.
Yeah.
Is because he was a veteran and he was able to find out. But in order to get treatment, he'd have to not work. And if he didn't work, then the kid and the girl would have got thrown out on the street. And he couldn't have let that happen. And in fact, the kid actually was his helper, like he was did handyman work, and the kid was his assistant. So when they were painting the house, that kid was spilling paint all over the place, and some of it would get to Barney, and he put it on the house. But for the most part, that was the workforce. That was the name of the company. I still have the invoices, receipts, and the invoices and everything. It was called Clear Space. That was the company
right. Yeah.
that he had set up. And that's how he would give me an invoice. This is like one of those ones you just get from Office Depot, like the blank sheet, and you just write
handwritten
Clear Space at the top, and you say $650. There you go. There's your invoice.
Yep.
And this is also where this story comes from. There was there years ago, when I think it was on Tony Ortega's blog. Essentially, what happened is, I want to say this was in 2007 now. 2006 or 2007, I can't remember. Barney's working for me at my shop in Burbank. He says, I'm going to have a party or birthday party or something. There's some sort of party that's happening, and with his daughters. It was going to be Suzette and Camille, and they were going to go off and do something. And I can't remember what they were going to do. He
was going to Vegas. I'm not entirely sure who all was going to be there, but it was definitely going to be, I think, Camille's family. I'm not sure who else, but some kind of thing was happening, and it was all he could talk about during the week was how this is going to do this, and it's going to be so much fun, and da da da. And him and the kid were working, and everything was normal. I mean, he was an older guy, but he did whatever he did, and he was certainly full of life, at least from our perspective.
Yeah.
I had known that Shelly had told me when he first was diagnosed with cancer, when we were still in, and I think she had mentioned to me then that he was refusing treatment, but he'd never really told me about his prognosis or anything like that. And he was certainly, remember, he used to dote on our oldest son, who was like 1.5, little Blondie at the time. He loved our son. Oh my gosh, he was so sweet to him. He would always talk to him, and our son didn't even talk yet, and he would just be like, "Hey dude, how's it going? You hanging in there?"
Yeah, no, he didn't, whatever was going on behind the scenes, he didn't let on to that at all. He just did his thing. And the only even time he kind of got a little ornery is if, he started we'd have a drink or two, and then he'd start talking about Dave or Shelly and just kind of like the futility of it all. Like they did all that for what? It literally means nothing in the overall scheme of things. His whole family was sacrificed, and for what? For nothing. So
he lost 3 of his daughters for decades, and only finally reunited with one of those daughters. Obviously,
despite all of their efforts to make sure that did not happen.
Exactly.
So
good reason.
Even the thing that he talked about, we really get worked up over it, was the fact that he would calling for Suzette for a year, and they never told him, "We kicked her out of here. She doesn't work here anymore." That's it. That's all every person that ever answered that phone knew that she didn't work there anymore.
Yeah.
But they never told him.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is that had we not helped Suzette and brought her back to California.
Well, no, she was already in California when we got there.
That's right.
She was in California. She just was doing something that she shouldn't have been doing. She could have done whatever she wanted, but
that's right.
She was doing work that was trying. They basically, what they do is they know your strengths. They know your strong suits, and they set you up to fail so that you rely on them for network and connection. If somebody would have just said, what's the best thing for this girl to do, would be to go to Hollywood and do this function, they could have hooked her up with a job in 2 seconds.
Totally.
And instead, they get her to do a job that she's not good at, or she's not really, not that she's not good at it. She does not excel in that area. A laborer could do that work, but she could do something that would be paid 10 times what a laborer would get paid to do that.
Yeah, and more importantly, she's working in an office with another person who's an ex-member of the Sea Organization who is sending reports directly to Office of Special Affairs about her every move, who she's talking to, what she's doing, all of that.
Yeah.
Because remember, I worked in that same office for a little bit.
Yep. And so that's another thing that they do is they have an ex-member that's on their team, but that lives in the real world, an ex-Sea Org member, not an ex-Scientologist, a current Scientologist, a civilian Scientologist that used to work for the Sea Organization. So you have this person that is in a position to either hire somebody or it works in an office that they have control over who gets hired or fired in that office because it's owned by a Scientologist or they've got an in or whatever it is. And then they're basically keeping tabs on this person. They're putting them in a job that they're not going to make a ton of money and be able to be like, forget you, I'm out of here. Yeah. It's kind of, they're giving you a little life preserver, but they're not letting you back in the boat. They don't want you to get in the boat. They just want to keep you above water, barely. And so this is how they set it up with these ex-members. And this is exactly what they did. And with Suzette. And now, again, Suzette is Shelly Miscavige's sister. And they're going to send her to go clean up flood houses in Louisiana. Whereas they could say, listen, she didn't make it in the Sea Org. And not only is this maybe the right thing to do or the just, or how do you say, just the human thing to do. But she's royalty. She's related to Shelly Miscavige.
And not only that, she used to be married to
Dave's
nephew.
Yeah, that's true. It was a double royalty. But here's the other thing, just common sense. This girl is a huge risk if anything goes sideways with her.
Yep.
We should be not only control over it, but we should be lavishing her in gifts and kindness so that she just has a great life from now on, even though we wrecked the first half of it. That would just be sensible from there. No. David Miscavige wants to make her pay because she was such a, I'll tell you, I know, because we have the spy files that have every little detail what they did with this gal.
Yes.
And so
she was as much a victim as anybody else in this whole mess.
Yeah, they literally did everything they could to make sure that she would fail after she left Scientology. And even with all of that, her mom, Barney's, I guess, second wife, is still involved with Scientology. Yeah. So she had
at least last we knew.
Well, whichever,
and at least
at
at this time that we're talking about.
Yeah, in this 2006, 2007 time period.
Yeah.
So she did everything she could to not get disconnected from her mother. And in order to reconnect with her mother, when she eventually did get disconnected from her mother, we didn't help with that because she was living with us and we were big bad SPs.
Right.
So when she had to move out, they in these files, they say, you have to get this girl out of that house with the Headleys.
I think they even made her move to a different apartment is what I saw in one of those spy file documents.
No, they had in one of the spy file documents. It says we found her an apartment in Santa Monica. That's 45 minutes from the Headleys.
Yeah,
exactly. I was like, on a good day, 45 minutes. It could be Friday. It could be 3 hours.
May as well be in a different state.
Yeah, I was like 45 minutes. She's never coming over. That's at 2 a.m. It takes 45 minutes to get there. Yeah. Anyway, but. Yeah, so they moved her as far as they could, but so that she'd still be near where she could work and where she could make her money.
And even that was evil. We were her friends. Like she loved hanging out with our son too. And
I know. But
anyway.
But because they had to get her under their control, but they also had this leverage of the mother. So because she wanted to talk to the mother, I mean, that was her only family after Barney passed was, I guess, Camille and her mom and whatever other family, whatever relatives of the mother there are. And I don't know the extent of the mother's involvement in her Scientology or what Camille's part and all that was at that time either. But regardless, Scientology tried to stack the deck against her every chance they could. And even though she was playing the game with them and trying to get back in good standings, and they still stuck it to her. And it was sort of like, and that's the same thing that happened with Barney. They could have set this guy up. They could have, really done a lot to prolong his life and raise the quality of his life. And it was just not even, I don't even think it was, I mean, if they would have thought about it, they probably would have done it. I don't know why you wouldn't. It just doesn't even make sense for, it's not, if you're I think in the 90s, Miscavige had to release what he made, and he made $350,000 or something when they had to do the IRS filing. He was making $350,000 a year. Every other Sea Org member in the world would be happy as a clam if they made $3,500 a year. That would mean they just got paid every week. He's making
he's making $350,000 free and clear. He has no living costs,
not a single penny,
expenses, no car payment, insurance, everything is covered 100%. But yeah, let's also talk about the details we know about Barney's funeral, because that was one of the last times.
Yeah,
Shelly,
so that's this event that I was talking about on that's been talked about on Tony Ortega's blog or in stories on the internet or other people that have done videos. So Barney's working on Friday. He passes on Saturday. There's immediately a funeral and that everything goes into, work on, okay, what are we going to do? Who's going to go? And Suzette is going to this funeral. And we're wondering, like, Shelly's got to go, right? There's just no way that she's not. Shelly's the one who set the whole thing up.
Yep.
She arranged it. She worked it all out. She was like, this person's doing this person's doing that. Shelly arranged the whole thing. And so you think, okay, because we had heard stories that Shelly had just disappeared.
Yep.
And so now this is 2007.
Yep.
2007? Yeah, this is 2007.
Yep. And it was mid-2006 when she was no longer with Dave 24/7.
Yes.
So it was 2007. I think it was like mid-year, if I'm not mistaken.
So we had heard some rumblings about something that had happened, and then Shelly was sort of cast off, and then no one had seen her. And this was fresh, but it still had been going on for months, if not a year or so, where it was just like Shelly kind of disappeared off the grid.
And it was still outrageous to us, even though we were no longer there, to imagine that this had happened to Shelly.
Like, what?
Like, wow.
Are you kidding me?
What in the world is going on?
Yeah.
How can this be happening?
Yeah, and we were hearing stories of what was going on there, and we thought it was crazy when we were there. And it was like, that's where you hear about this woman named Debbie Cook being put in a trash can, and they're pouring hoses over her, and they're calling her all sorts of slurs, and you're just like, what?
Yeah.
And then we had heard some stories about maybe Mike Rinder had also left, and there's all these weird things that are going on. And so then Suzette goes to the funeral, and when she comes back from the funeral, she's like, Shelly's not COB assistant anymore. And we were like, what?
Yeah.
She goes, nope. And this is what she told me. She said, the entire time that I've known Shelly, she's been in the Sea organization. And every single time she's talked to me, she's talked down to me. Mm-hmm. You need to do this. You need to do that. I can't keep bailing you out. I can't do this. You got to do that. You got to do this. And she goes, this is the first time that she was talking to me. And she was like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to help you anymore. I'm not going to be able to do anything for you anymore. You've got, and essentially, Shelly had two people there with her at the funeral.
Yeah.
A woman by the name of Antonella Tizzy.
Yep.
And another woman by the name of Ann Rathbun.
Yep.
And those two women are in the Religious Technology Center. One of them is a professional interrogator. That is her job. Her post title is, the purpose of that post is to interrogate people on the e-meter. And that's what she does.
Which one are you talking about? Because you could say that of both
Well,
of them, actually.
Antonella was that
Okay.
that was pretty much Antonella's job
Yeah.
the entire time that I knew her for 15 years.
Yep.
I didn't think she did anything besides that.
Yeah, true.
I mean, what else did she do?
Well, yeah, that was one of her main functions for many, many years.
She was an investigator in RTC.
She had different roles. Like for a while she was over staff training and whatever. But either way,
which is also over interrogations.
Yeah.
Either way, this broad was an interrogator. That's all she did. She was either, and I'll tell you this, when she wasn't interrogating somebody, she was babysitting them.
Yep.
So, and that's all I knew her to do for the time I was there. Was if she's not interrogating that person, she's just with them to make sure they don't fly off into the sunset and end up on a YouTube channel doing videos.
Right.
So, and the other woman, Anne Rathbun, she's just a bulldog. She's the babysitter when the first babysitter fails. She's the backup babysitter, and she's also probably watching Antonella too.
Yeah,
and also,
Anne Rathbun is one of the most vicious people I know.
And to be honest, Antonella's probably watching Anne too. So
yeah,
it's like it's a three-way thing. The only person who's not watching anybody is Shelly. Shelly's just like, great.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Shelly is at the funeral, and Antonella and Anne are with her the whole time. Mm-hmm. And Suzette said that Shelly was trying to get a word in with her, but Antonella and Anne were with her at every single step of the way. And at some point, they ducked into the restroom and locked the door, and that's when Shelly delivered this message to Suzette, like, I'm out, I'm off the board, you're on your own, you got to take care of yourself, do the right thing, kid, and see you wouldn't want to be you kind of thing. Like, and Suzette was like, that's the first time ever that she talked to me and not at me or down to me. Mm-hmm. And she could tell that Shelly was just broken and was just like wasn't the Shelly that she was before. She was a new Shelly, and the Shelly that was like, whatever's happening. And she didn't tell Suzette, I don't remember anything much more than that. It was just, it was really a short thing. This is what happened. And it was like, wow. Anyway, I don't remember who else. Suzette told this to a bunch of people. And I'm not exactly sure, but somebody that she talked to Tony Ortega. And then it was like a world of pain that was a world of bullshit for Suzette. Because I think by this time she had pretty much was on the road to being able to talk to her mom and, and now it was just like, great. And I'm not sure if she blames us for that. I certainly didn't. I'm not the one who told Tony the story who then told it. No. I think in actual fact, Tony Ortega might have told me a version of the story that he had heard from somebody else that Suzette had talked to. Yeah. But regardless, Suzette did end up getting back into good standing so that she could speak to her mother again.
Yeah, and she paid off her freeloader bill, however many thousands of dollars she had to pay back to Scientology.
And I think, in my heart of hearts, I think Suzette was just done playing the game and messing and doing this and doing that, and she just wanted to get on with her life and live her life and do whatever she needed to do. And if you don't, it's kind of a hard thing to say because we do it all day, every day. If you don't talk about Scientology and you don't say what's going on there and you just keep your mouth shut, it's pretty likely Scientology is going to let you talk to your family again. Yep. As soon as you say anything that they don't want you to say to anybody, that's it. You're never going to see those family members again. And so it's a Sophie's Choice kind of thing. It is what it is.
It's a very high price to pay.
Scientology, they didn't give us that choice, really.
They didn't. They made the decision for us.
They pretended like we were going to we were going to negotiate, like we were going to do something with this. Mm-hmm. And then they played that game for like 4 months. They played this game with us, like, you're not going to get declared, but we need to figure out exactly what we're going to do with you and all this. They'd already declared us 3 days after Claire left. Yeah. We were already declared. All our families had already been notified. Everybody been on lockdown. It was like, you're never going to talk to them ever again. And here we were like, well, what do we got to do? We have to pay them for freeloader debt.
Let's try to figure out. I know I was like, well, we could go back to Los Angeles and do a sec check. And you were like, what are you talking about?
I was like,
I'm like, no,
nope.
they're saying that we can do that and we'll still be able to talk to our families. And you were like, well, we'll see. And sure enough.
That was the best part is I was very skeptical. I'm like, this is all bullshit. This is all a trap. They're going to get us back there, and then we're never going to see the light of day.
Yeah, and I didn't want to listen because I wanted so badly just to be able to talk to my family.
Exactly, but they'd already declared us already 3 months earlier.
I know.
So it's sort of like when we did find out that we had been declared suppressives, I was like, we've been declared for 4 months. I was like, this is the big, like, I mean, I couldn't have printed a bigger "told you so" ticket if I wanted to. It's just like, who's been saying this is a bunch of bullshit? And they just said, we've been declared for 4 months. Like, why even? It was just a giant waste of everybody's time.
Yeah,
anyway.
I know. I was like, note to self, time to wake up and smell the coffee here.
Yeah. So back to Suzette and Barney. Yeah. And so these people, so Barney, again, he got old and they just were like, whatever. He's not going to live forever. And let him die. Rest in peace, Barney.
Yeah.
Solid dude. He did what he had to do. And
Scientology destroyed him and his family is the bottom line.
It's such a tragic story because it's there's not a lot of Scientology families where it's where they ride off into the sunset and everybody's just like rock solid stars and we have so many good memories from that. No, that's not.
There's no happily ever after in Scientology.
That is a very rare one, and some of the ones where you think, yeah, they did actually write. Oh no, they went to jail. They were fraudsters. They stole millions of dollars from Medicare. There we go. What about this one? Oh, he reads Slack and he's no, biggest Ponzi scheme since Madoff. Since Ponzi. Actually, Bernie Madoff had to dethrone him. But yeah, so, and that was another thing. You're right. When Barney, like when he would tell stories about what they used to have and what they used to, like when they were in Texas, I think that he was a baller. And he had a company,
had a very successful company,
and and they had a house, and it was just like doing it, man. We're doing it. And then as soon as Scientology came into the picture, that was just wiped out. And it wasn't one of these things where it was wiped out over decades. Within a few years, they were busted. It was done. It was just a chain of events. That just were just like, oh, you can't get any worse. Oh, no, we just double worst. Oh, no, now it's triple worse. Oh, the kids are gone. Oh, we don't know where they are. We have no idea.
He was sucked into the spider's web, and the harder he fought, the tighter he was roped in and couldn't get out.
Yeah, and the fact that at the end of the day, and this is where you've got to see, this is where it comes all back to Shelly. Shelly could have snapped her fingers and these two would have been set for life.
Yep.
Barney wouldn't have had any problems, and whatever problems he did have would be being dealt with by experts in their field. They could afford and have connections to get him the best possible cancer care available to anyone. They could have had that set up in a second, and they've done stuff like that for people that they needed to do that for. And we saw that at the base all the time. I've seen them help other people with stuff that they're not even related to, and those people could give half a turd about them. But Barney just gets put out to pasture like, whatever, we don't care. Same thing with Suzette, we don't care. It's the family thing. Again, it goes back to this Scientology thing where we've all lived trillions of lives, and there's no brothers or mothers or fathers or sisters, or none of that matters. It's all just whatever. Yeah. Humans made that up, and it's not a thing. So you think, well, Shelly, some people are like, oh, she's the one that was mopping up after Dave, and well, was she? I don't know. You know, she could have helped her dad out.
Yeah.
What would have been even if it was like Dave was like, what are you doing that for? It's like, he could have been annoyed and she still could have done it. Like, I know it pisses you off that I'm paying Barney's rent and getting him care and doing all this, but he's my dad. And that could have been the end of that conversation, and it is what it is. But
and just to add to that, so Shelly was dragged into Scientology at the age of 4 years old. And the information that we'll talk about in the next episode of the horrifying experiences that she had through her childhood as a result of being in Scientology. My answer to that is yes, I'm sure Shelly has dirty hands. The bottom line is she was a victim first and foremost, and she lived through things no child should ever have to live through at the hands of Scientology. Doesn't make what she did later okay, but this is the trauma and the tragedy that is Scientology that has made Shelly who she is today.
Yeah, and you can also say that Shelly was raised by Scientology.
Yes.
Scientology was her parent. Barney wasn't her dad. Flo wasn't her mom. They gave birth to her. They raised her to 4, and then Scientology took over at that point and became her parent. And the reason that she is in the position that she's in, and the reason she's living the life that she's living, is because of Scientology. And so whatever, I mean, that's the other, we fight this all the time. Claire and I have a problem with this, is that since we were raised in that place, you can't, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it happens with all kinds of parents is, they were raised a certain way and then they become parents and they go, well, I turned out great, so I'm going to raise my kids the exact way my parents raised me. Or they go, I hated my childhood. My childhood was a nightmare. I'm not going to do anything that my parents did. And so we have this thing with like, well, we were given away. Like, hey, yep, have fun. I'll see you later. And
who needs an education? You're gonna go serve 1 billion years in the Sea Organization.
School.
You've done 1 billion degrees in your many lifetimes before.
So we're thinking, well, that was horrible. I wouldn't want to put the kids through that. But at the same time, you're like, well, I do own a pretty baller company. I don't do too shabby. I have a wonderful life now. And I've got this stupid Scientology people that kind of harass me on the side, but whatever. They've been harassing me for 20 years. No big deal. And that was when I stopped working for them. When they used to harass me a lot worse on a regular basis when I did work for them. But so then you go, well, what do you do? So I don't know. I don't want to blame Barney for what happened to Shelly.
No.
But I will say, when Barney was trying to get a hold of the kids or do this, Scientology was like, nah, we don't know where she is, even though we know exactly where she is and she's not here. We're not going to tell you that. But you're like, yeah, again, why do they have to do that? I don't know. I don't know why any of this had to happen. It seems like to me, it seems like a silly problem to have all these people that are disgruntled when you could easily make them not disgruntled with the snap of your fingers, and it wouldn't even be it really wouldn't make that big of a difference to Shelly or Dave at all for any of these people to just be like, you know what? I'm sorry you had a bad experience. Here's a bunch of money and live your life. And I hope you
and here's your
be
family
well.
back.
Yeah,
you can talk to them whenever you want.
Yeah, here's your mom. Here's your dad. Be well. I guarantee you there'd be a lot less videos on YouTube, and there'd a lot less books being written out there if they just treat people civilly when they want to GTFO out of that joint.
Exactly, I know completely.
Anyway, I hope that we've been able to give you a little bit more information about Shelly and then some of her other family members that we have direct relationships with, and I think the more of these videos that get done, the more you're going to get the whole picture. I mean, people are like, where's Shelly? Where's Shelly? Well, it's a complicated question. How'd Shelly get to wherever she is?
Yeah. Who is Shelly? Why would she be putting up with this? And all of that is a complicated question that we're endeavoring to answer as best as we can.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, pretty soon, I think Shelly's going to be, I want to say she's 62 or 63 now.
She's 62.
62. In 3 years, she's going to be what's going to be qualified as an elderly person. Mm-hmm. And she's going to need to be cared for properly. And there's not going to be, I don't think there's a home they're going to be able to send her to.
Nope.
So, I mean, do they do the same thing they did with Mary Sue? Is they just put her in a house in the middle of somewhere and just give her an assistant and be done with it? Just like, we're never going to hear from this woman. Make sure that the cable feed works, but there's no internet.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just firmly of the view, if Shelly is alive, she should have a say in her future, period. End of story. And I know that's a pipe dream from our experiences in Scientology, or just an unreality.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that is the case. That it should be up to Shelly as to what the rest of her life will look like. And
yeah.
Anyway, one can only hope, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, she's probably, out of everybody that David Miscavige has dealt with over the years, she might be the worst person to become unharnessed or to be set free, or left to her own devices, because I mean, I doubt that she knows what Dave's been up to for the past 10 years.
Yep.
I bet he's been doing stuff and saying stuff that she doesn't have any clue of. And if she found out that might change her position on, does she want to be their captive, or does she want to be like, wait a minute, this wasn't part of the deal.
Yeah, exactly.
And to be continued.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.